Pablo and the Doctor.
Hey Who fans, this is the Big Blue Box Podcast, episode 10. Thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope you've all had a good couple of weeks. It's been crazy with Who news over the last 10 days, I guess. All centred around Series 8 and Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman and so on. So Who mania is all around the new stuff, rightly so. I'm going to take you through a few of those newsy bits in our news roundup. Then we're going to smash in with the TARDIS talk, talking about some 10th anniversary stuff, as in 10th anniversary of 2005, the rejuvenation. And on the retrospective for this episode, we're going to bring back some classic stuff some of you will be happy to know. So let's get into episode 10. So first up for the news for this episode, it's going to be, like I said, it's mainly around some of the newer stuff leading up to Deep Breath, which is really close now. It's almost scarily close. As in, like exciting, crazy. Even when you just mention it and you start talking about it with people, you've got that sense of excitement and anticipation coming through. It's very, very cool. In fact, I don't remember a series of Doctor Who as much as a build-up as we're having right now for Series 8. I remember when Chris Eccleston, although this is so, well, it's not really bad, but you know, I'm like I said before, I'm a relatively new Doctor Who fan, and I wasn't watching the show when it came back in 2005. However, I do remember quite a lot of news around the Chris Eccleston leaving the show and David Tennant, that whole regeneration thing. And I also remember the David Tennant regeneration to Matt Smith. But I don't remember this much hype. I don't remember red carpet events, world tours, global simulcasts, Q&As, cinema viewings, all that kind of stuff. I don't remember that. Please tell me if I'm wrong. If you know of any, I know there's been like Doctor Who parties and there's been small Doctor Who events at select cinemas, more sort of the more small independent cinemas and stuff. I'm aware of those because I've been to a couple myself, but I'm not aware of this huge global phenomena that Doctor Who has grown into because with the Matt Smith series, I mean, it all started when I think halfway through David Tennant's tenure, it really propelled globally. At that point, and Matt Smith took that and took it to another level, but this just seems to be crazy, like stupid crazy. However, it's great for Doctor Who, more exposure, more stuff, which means that the BBC are less likely to cancel it. So that's all good. Anything that's cool globally for Doctor Who that raises awareness, that makes the BBC aware of just how, I mean, I'm sure they are, but you know, just aware of how important the show is, makes us less likely to have a Colin Baker repeat. So first bit of news, Series 8. The first episode, Deep Breath, we've now got a confirmed time. So the date we've known for a while, so Saturday the 23rd of August. It's so close. 9 days. I'm recording this podcast on Thursday evening, the 14th of August in the UK. So it's literally 9 days. 9 days away. That's crazy. So Saturday the 23rd of August, and it will air in the UK on BBC One at 7:50 p.m. Obviously, it wouldn't go out at 7:50 in the morning. So I didn't need to say PM, but anyway, 7:50 p.m. I just said it again. Saturday the 23rd of August, 7:50, BBC One. And our friends over in the US, you'll be able to see it very, very shortly after. So UK time, I think. I don't actually, is this UK time? All I know is in the US, it's airing at 8:15. So I don't know if that is our version of 8:15. So when we hit 8:15, it then starts to air, which I can't see that because it'll be lunchtime for you guys in the US. So lots of waffle about time. Wow, what a timey-wimey episode. Sorry about that. Yeah, so 8:15 in the US, in the evening your time, I guess, you'll be able to see it. Unless there is some crazy simulcast, iPlayer, internet sorcery going on that you guys be able to get up and watch it, which will be cool if you do. You can join in a discussion on the many forums and Twitter and all that kind of jazz, because that will suck quite a bit, won't it? Let's be honest. If our buddies over in the US, if you start to see all of our messages and tweets and blog posts and everything like that before you've even seen the episode, that's going to be a bit sucky. Yeah, so maybe get up and try and see it online somewhere. I'm sure it's going to be on iPlayer shortly after or whatever. Don't know. But yeah, so Deep Breath, Saturday the 23rd. 9 days. 9 days. Really looking forward to it. Leading on from that, we've got the official synopsis now from the BBC. And it goes thus. When the Doctor arrives in Victorian London, he finds a dinosaur rampant in the Thames and a spate of deadly spontaneous combustions. End of synopsis. And I think we can kind of see that from the trailer as well. The trailer for Deep Breath has been... I think this is the third trailer they've put out now in total for the BBC on their YouTube channel. And so this one's a bit cut down, but it does give you the gist of what is going on.
The Doctor needs us, you more than anyone.
Bring the carriage, now!
The question is, have there been any similar murders?
The Doctor? What's he doing here? There is trouble. Where else would he be? You've redecorated. I don't like it.
Doctor Who, Saturday 23rd of August on BBC One.
Ooh. Even the guy doing the sign-off sounds excited. Doctor Who, this Saturday. Well, he didn't really sound like that, but he sounded excited. Well, I think internally he was excited. You know, didn't jump around and go, ah! But there was some excitement there, I'm sure. So that's the trailer for Deep Breath, the latest one. I'm sure that'll be the last one now. Because I don't think they can fit any more into a trailer, to be honest, without giving some really big story points away. Yeah, I think that's going to be the last one. It's very cool. It's quite short. I think the first one that they put out was the Doctor kind of holding onto the rails in the TARDIS and like an X-ray view. You could see in his internal organs and stuff like that, and there was fireworks and explosions, as there usually is in the TARDIS these days. And we heard the voice of Davros and the Daleks and stuff. And I think the second trailer was just slightly longer than the one that they've just put out. So this one they've just done is just under 30 seconds, and I think the second trailer was a bit longer. But yeah, it looks very cool. Really, really looking forward to the start of Series 8. It doesn't feel like it's been that long a gap, you know. I don't know if that's just me. Oh, do you know what it was? Probably from the last series, Series 7 with Matt Smith, because they put that damn break in the middle. It felt like that series just went on for, forever. But it doesn't feel like there's been that big a time between the Christmas special with Matt Smith regenerating up to now. I know it's only 8 months, which is kind of, well, it's not mega long, I guess, but yeah, it's long enough. It's long enough. But now we're here and it's almost upon us. It does feel quite short. I think because the BBC have put out so much information and tidbits and it's been hyped up and everything like that, it's kind of been in your face constantly. Even though it's not been on TV, it's been very, there's been a lot of Doctor Who stuff going on. So, and on the back of the, coming off the back of the 50th as well, where the whole world just went Who crazy for the last half of the year. It doesn't feel like there's been much of a wind down into 2014, but it's all good. It's all good. Next bit of news bits, the old Twitter guys have recruited Jenna Coleman officially onto Twitter. Now, I don't know if they recruited her personally. It's not like a invite-only scheme. Anyone can join Twitter. It's taken her a long time to get on board. And it's quite convenient that she's joined Twitter now while she's on the world tour. It just sounds ridiculous. Does that sound a little bit ridiculous to you guys? She's officially joined Twitter while they're on their world tour promotion for Doctor Who. That's a bit nuts. But yeah, you can follow Jenna Coleman. It's at Jenna_Coleman_. Bit weird. There's nothing under the last underscore. So at Jenna_Coleman_. And there you go. She doesn't tweet very often. She's put a couple of pics on there, a couple of messages, and that's it. But it does seem like a bit of a, not a cash cow, but a bit of a coincidence, a bit of a timey-wimey coincidence that she's never once been interested in Twitter at all. And now that she's on the world tour and the BBC need to generate as much publicity as possible before the start of Series 8, she magically appears on Twitter. But I'm not sure how long that will last. I don't even know if it's her tweeting. You never know with these celebrity accounts, do you? I know some of them are very personal and real to some celebrities. I follow Simon Pegg, and he very much, there's nobody tweeting on his account. It's very personal to him, and his buddy Nick Frost as well. And I think didn't Stephen Moffat have a Twitter account for a while, but then cancelled it because he was just distracted by it most of the day, apparently, where he was tweeting stuff out and the whole world just descended and just gave him some stick over certain Doctor Who stuff or showed him some love for whatever. And he just couldn't keep up with it, and it was distracting him from his writing. So yeah, not sure. And then Doctor Who stars, I know David Tennant is very much not opposed to being on Twitter. He just doesn't really care for it. And there's loads of fake there's loads of fake David Tennant accounts, same on Facebook and stuff. Chris Eccleston, I'm not sure. Let me know, guys, if he's on there. Matt Smith, I've not seen any official stuff for him. I know that Matt Smith's mum is on Twitter because she occasionally posts pictures of Matt Smith doing the Christmas dinner and the washing up and all that kind of stuff that the BBC wouldn't put out. So yeah, so Jenna Coleman is on Twitter. Go and follow her and maybe see if she actually personally tweets stuff, which would be cool. Maybe we'll get some cool behind the scenes photos from her or set pics, whatever. But yeah, at Jenna_Coleman_. Cool. And last bit of news. This is quite an interesting one, actually. There's been a casting call put out for a very interesting and kind of out of left field Doctor Who film. Now, it's not a typical Doctor Who film. It's not a film that's going to be made like from the TV series. They're now going to produce a big feature-length film. It's not a docudrama or well, it is a kind of docudrama, I guess. Well, I guess it will be. And it's about a film called The Letter, and it's based on the early life of Tom Baker. And this only surfaced online, I think it was maybe a week ago, 10 days ago, where we didn't find out about the project itself online. It wasn't announced or anything like that. The only thing we saw was a casting call for the role of Tom Baker. And now more details have come to light and so on. And yeah, so as far as I can gather, the setup, I mean, certainly the title is kind of self-explanatory, because those of you who know the background to Tom Baker and how he got the role of Doctor Who, he was essentially working as a builder. He was just doing labouring and groundwork and stuff on a building site. And he just, on the off chance, just sent a letter in to the BBC inquiring about, acting and being in the role. And amazingly, it kind of, I don't know how the exact details, but it paid off for him. So he went from being a builder to the Doctor, which is ace. That's really cool. And a similar thing happened to Harrison Ford when he started acting. Before he was Han Solo, he had a role in George Lucas's first kind of commercial movie called American Graffiti. And he was a carpenter. He was, again, like in the building trade and that sort of thing, and just happened to, really wanted to be an actor and, somehow, just got his foot in the door. So I've got a load of respect for actors and actresses that get into the industry that way. There seems to be less of a pompous, nature about them. And those of you that have met Tom Baker in real life, you'll know just how gracious he is and how open and understanding he is with giving people his time and so on. So yeah, I'm really up for this this documentary or docudrama. I'm not sure which route they're going to go down, but I imagine it's going to be in a very similar ilk to An Adventure in Space and Time. I can't see the production value being super high like it was on An Adventure in Space and Time. However, this does look like a very cool idea, and I'm guessing that the main reason for doing this film is because it's such an interesting and out of the norm way for a person to get into acting, and not only for someone doing that, leading that life of just being an everyday guy on a building site, not only getting into acting but landing such an iconic role as a Doctor. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be cool. I'll keep you guys updated when I hear more about this, but yeah, it sounds very cool. So that wraps up the news. So let's grab the TARDIS and get into TARDIS talk. So TARDIS Talk, this episode, is going to be around something that I've been thinking about after I read a certain very short snippet of news with Mr. Stephen Moffat. And it centres around the upcoming 10th anniversary of the comeback of Doctor Who. Now, as we know, the Doctor has been back on our screens. It will be 10 years next year. So 2005, Russell T Davies, Julie Gardner and everyone else brought back Doctor Who to BBC One with Chris Eccleston and Billy Piper, and it's kind of just exploded from there on. And I think I remember reading an interview or watching a video interview with Russell T Davies, and he said that, I'm not going to quote here, but he basically said he'll be very surprised if they got 10 years out of it. So it's pretty amazing that for a show that's been around for so long and has been cancelled a couple of times, and now it was a big chance, a really big. It was a lot riding on the show coming back in 2005, but it's still here and it's bigger than ever. So TARDIS Talk, this episode, is basically going to be around the question to myself, which is, should the BBC celebrate officially the 10th anniversary of Doctor Who coming back? More importantly, should there be any kind of special episode or any kind of special webisode, anything like that, by the Doctor, by the BBC or Stephen Moffat, whatever. Now, I can already hear in my headphones you guys screaming at your MP3 player or your computer or whatever you're listening to. No, it's ridiculous. Why would you do that? And to be honest with you, I've kind of felt like that for a while. When I thought about the 10th anniversary stuff, I kind of felt like that. It was a bit like, do we really need to celebrate that it's been on for 10 years? Do we really need to go mad? Because let's look at a couple of things. First of all, we've only just had the 50th anniversary celebrations. And that was huge. There was so much going on, and there was so much of it in the media and everywhere. Not just in the UK, but globally, it was just crazy. So the last 6 months of 2013 were just amazing, so good, and that was only when the 10th anniversary rolls around next year, the 50th have only been a couple of years ago. So is that still going to be fresh in people's mind? Let's look at the polls as well. The official Doctor Who magazine, the poll that they ran a few months ago, the Day of the Doctor came in at number 1. So it's obviously the whole kind of 50th thing is still, fresh in people's minds. And I'm sure it still is right now. I know that when I talk about Doctor Who, And if I'm talking about it with just friends at work or whatever online, I still now reference things quite recent from the 50th anniversary, like An Adventure in Space and Time or going to the proms or whatever. So it's still fresh kind of in my mind as well when I'm just, talking generally about Doctor Who. But is it too soon after the big 50th celebration? Not too sure. The second thing to consider is, if we look at the actual show itself in 2005, the actor Chris Eccleston, who was the Doctor at the time, I think it's a pretty safe bet that you're not going to get him to do anything for a 10th anniversary, because if the BBC are going to bring some kind of celebration, either to a kind of special TV episode or a documentary or a webisode or something, surely it has to feature Chris Eccleston somewhere. Because if it wasn't for him, it's a bit much to say if it wasn't for him then we wouldn't have the show now, because that's incorrect. Because if he didn't take on the role, I'm sure there would have been an able actor, just as good as Chris Eccleston to have done it, and we'd still be here. Possibly, I'm not sure. But seeing as he was the guy that took the big chance, because it wasn't just the BBC taking a chance with this. The actors as well put not their careers on the line, but it was a bit of nobody knew how the public would take to Doctor Who again. Nobody knew, it was still very popular for people, but kind of niche, if you know what I mean. Within sci-fi on TV, it was very niche because it was always viewed as just an old, typically British sci-fi thing that not many people were kind of, into, because at the time there was very modern science fiction that's been around for a few years already. So nobody really knew, how much it would, and certainly nobody knew how much of a success it would be and how huge it would be. So Chris Eccleston and Billie Piper, more so Chris Eccleston, who'd been around acting for, quite a lot longer than Billie Piper, it was kind of a risk for him as well, because if it was a massive flop, then, I'm pretty sure that there would have been a little bit of finger pointing in his direction. So, would there be any possibility of getting him back to do something? For me, if he was to come back and do some kind of, even if it was just a 10-minute webisode, like Paul McGann did for the 50th. That was just that just came out of nowhere. That was so cool when the Paul McGann webisode surfaced. I think I watched it like 20 odd times in the end. It was amazing. So that was all that was needed. It didn't. Don't get me wrong. It would have been great to have a feature-length episode with Paul McGann, because I love Paul McGann as the Doctor. I really, really do. And although I'm not a huge fan of the movie in terms of its story and its production and some of the things within the film, I'm not too much of a fan on, but the majority of the Big Finish audio plays that I've got are the Paul McGann ones, because I love his when he gets into character as a Doctor, it is so good. So it would have been great to have a feature-length episode with Paul McGann, but the webisode was all that was needed, and that just went nuts. And everyone, if you go back and look at all of the conventions that he went to after that webisode went out, that's all people were talking about. He just got question after question all about that webisode, so people loved it. So can we see Chris Eccleston coming back and doing, even if it's just a short webisode? I don't think so. He's distanced himself so much from the show since then. I'm honestly in so much doubt. And I know that Stephen Moffat met up with Chris Eccleston to chat about the 50th before it went into production, and he still said no. He was still like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. And I think he's been approached before. Could you just hit me up on Twitter or Facebook about that? I'm sure that Chris Eccleston has been approached before then to do something with Doctor Who, and he turned that down. So he's also turned down the 50th. So it's a pretty good chance that he'll turn down a 10th anniversary thing. Like I said, I'm not quite sure what would be cool around that. Some kind of documentary, or, I'm 99% sure that they're not going to go all out and do an hour-long special like they did for the 50th. I think that's a bit of a long shot. But it would be cool if they did something. Now that's going that's going to lead me on to my kind of my own opinion on this, and that is, it would be cool to do something, because let's face it, it was quite a big event when it came back in 2005, especially for fans of the show. It would kind of come out of the dark times, if you like. It seems to be quite common where, especially in sci-fi, where you have a kind of a really good start, and then you have a much improved series, or a few series, as time goes by. Then you have like a dip, not much happens, and you have a cancellation. A few years later, it comes back. And Doctor Who kind of fits that formula as well, where it started strong, it was very successful, and then just improved and improved. Patrick Troughton, it got better. John Pertwee and Tom Baker, it just soared. But then it kind of started to go a little bit, and it just kind of had little peaks and troughs since then, and just tapered off. And then we had like this, quite a few years gap in between. That, the dark times, if you like, where there wasn't any Doctor Who on TV, certainly. So, Doctor Who fans had to make do with magazines, and, there wasn't really much going on the internet back then either. So, in 2005, when it came back, it was mega well received. It was big news. Doctor Who was big news again, and I've spoken on this podcast before about the episode Rose, episode 1, when it came back. And that show, when it came back in 2005, was exactly what that show needed to be at the time. And it was so good. I mean, when I picked up the box set of Series 1, when I got into Doctor Who a few years after 2005, I could not put it down. It was so good. And I really like Chris. He's not my favourite Doctor, but I really like Chris Eccleston. I think it's a bit of a shame that we didn't get to see more of him, which is why it would be so cool if he came back and just... Because I do find it strange about Chris Eccleston, where in the interviews where he's been questioned about Doctor Who, and he hasn't got too humpy and miserable when he realised he's being questioned about Doctor Who, he does actually say that he's extremely proud of what they did for Series 1. He's extremely proud, really happy with what they achieved. But it just doesn't really show. It doesn't show through enough, because he distances himself so much from the show. He literally to the point where he doesn't want anything to do with it at all. Now, I'm pretty sure that Billie Piper would be up for something, because she's very much involved in the whole Doctor Who thing still. She still goes to conventions and talks at panels and signs and stuff as Rose. She's still very much into it. And she came back for the 50th. But I can't see Chris Eccleston. But it would be cool if he did. It would be very cool to just be like, right, I've kind of shunned you guys for a few years now. Well, for 10 years. I've not put my arse back in the TARDIS. I've not done anything at all for you guys, other than ask a few basic questions in interviews over the years. How cool would it be for him to come back and do something? Because we've got that whole period where that can be visited and expanded upon after his regeneration from the War Doctor. So when in the Day of the Doctor, where John Hurt's Doctor, at the end when he goes into the TARDIS and starts to regenerate, from there we don't see or hear anything at all, other than when we see the Doctor in the episode Rose meet up with Rose, and that's it. So there's that whole period where we've got a fresh new Doctor straight out of a regeneration, and we don't know anything about it. So that would be really, really cool to expand on that little time period. Well, I say little, whatever time period that is, whether it's a couple of years or a couple of 100 years for the Doctor, I'm not sure. But that would be very cool, because he's just come out of... Because at the end of the Day of the Doctor, he does say that he won't remember everything that's gone on in that episode. And as far as he knows, he was responsible for the destruction of Gallifrey. Or at least he was responsible for... Or he's still, mentally wounded from the Time War. So the Chris Eccleston Doctor, which would be fresh out of regeneration, was still, is still regenerated out of that dark time and that very, that war-ridden time and stuff. So he would be quite a very different Doctor to what they are now. So I'd be really interested to see how that would actually pan out, and his experiences, and how he, just what he's been up to in that period between his regeneration and meeting Rose. So not sure about you guys, how you feel about that, but should the BBC do something for a 10th anniversary of the 2005 comeback? Personally, I think they should, but I don't think they should go to overkill. And just lastly, I think the BBC are a little bit crazy and overkill with their marketing and trying to squeeze as much as humanly possible out of Doctor Who these days. So I can kind of see, I wouldn't be surprised if there was something. I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure what ideally for me, I would like to see a 10-minute webisode starring Chris Eccleston, straight out of regeneration from the War Doctor, up to meeting Rose. That for me would be all that's needed. They wouldn't have to invest in a big production 10th anniversary like they did with the 50th. It would just be really cool to have a webisode like they did with Paul McGann. And that would, lead us nicely into Doctor Who. And there may be a couple of documentaries, cobbled together from the Doctor Who confidential stuff around when Russell T Davies was bringing the show back, and some David Tennant stuff, and some Matt Smith bits, all that kind of stuff. So let me know what you guys think. Send me a short yes or no on Twitter at Big Blue Box PCast, or jump on Facebook, facebook.com/Big Blue Box Podcast, and just let me know what you guys think. Should we have a 10th anniversary special of Doctor Who? So that was TARDIS Talk. I hope I didn't ramble too much for you guys. And let's get back into the retrospectives. We're going to go classic. So we're going to go back to Tom Baker years on this one. We're going to go back to 1975. And this will be Tom Baker's Planet of Evil.
Someone's in trouble.
Where?
Who knows? Stand by for emergency materialization.
There it is, Zeta Minor, last planet of a known universe.
Full-scale exploitation of this planet will provide us with perpetual energy. I've made the greatest discovery in scientific history.
Now listen to me, please. You're tampering with hideously dangerous forces. Dangerous.
There is no antimatter aboard this ship.
And I tell you, there is.
You mean things can get worse?
Give the order!
Doctor!
Yes, I know. I'll take care.
We have ceased to exist.
Planet of Evil, Tom Baker. I kind of like this one. I thought this one was pretty cool. I wasn't a huge fan of one aspect of the story, which I'll come on to in a minute. But overall, I thought it was quite cool. It's one of those stories where it's got quite a good supporting cast. There are a couple of actors within aboard the crew of this ship that the Doctor and Sarah Jane get accosted to, which are very cool. There's a good kind of almost kind of necessary power struggle between two members. And I like Doctor Who stories where there's a really good cast. And there's been a couple of standout Doctor Who stories from the Tom Baker era, which have had absolutely superb supporting cast. A few that spring to mind would be Pyramids of Mars, Genesis of the Daleks. All really, really good stories featuring some great supporting cast members, as well as Tom Baker, obviously, and Elizabeth Sladen. And So this story, it's kind of it's one of those stories really where it's fairly predictable. And what I mean by that is there aren't any really big twists or cliffhangers or plot reveals that you just didn't see coming. It's one of those stories where, you know, it even starts out quite predictably, you know, in Doctor Who at the time, where the Doctor and companion in the TARDIS receive a distress call, and away they go. And you know that it's not going to end badly for them, but you know it's going to be a bit of a slog for the main part until they save the day at the end. So it's kind of got that kind of predictable nature about it. And so, you know, the basic setup is they receive a distress call from a planet called Zeta Minor, which happens to be right on the edge of the known universe. And there's already been a scientific crew on the planet already, because the home planet of Marestra is apparently, you know, run out of natural resources, and so, you know, their scientists have gone out to try and research and find an alternative to their own fossil fuels, I guess. So this one guy has ended up on Zeta Minor, and he thinks he's found some very cool fuel, if you like, or fuel replacement from some of the rocks on Zeta Minor. But what he doesn't know is that there's these rocks are actually antimatter, or they contain antimatter. And so the planet itself is, because it's on the edge of I'm guessing anyway, because it's on the edge of the known universe, it hasn't been researched that well. Not much is known about it. So these scientists are, you know, think that they're just harmlessly taking rocks away and stuff. And it kind of deals with this thing of antimatter, which has been around in science for many years, but it's always been viewed upon as a very, it's very theory based, and it's not conclusive and stuff like that. So the writers of Doctor Who at the time, Lewis Marks and Robert Holmes, they kind of twist this kind of antimatter story and stuff into making it an evil force, if you like. Well, not an evil force, but, you know, the repercussions are deadly if you mess with antimatter. And it's so it's basically the setup of the story is that at the start they land on this planet where a scientific crew has already been there, but they've been slowly, you know, killed. So the Doctor and Sarah Jane, they investigate, but the bigger ship crew arrive, take them as prisoners, but people are still dying. So the Doctor and Sarah Jane escape, bit of investigation, they get taken prisoner again, a bit of to-ing and fro-ing, until it slowly comes to light that, you know, the Doctor's fully aware of what's going on. And, you know, the mad scientist kind of guy, he's been exposed to this antimatter, it's inside him, so he goes a bit crazy. The Doctor obviously knows this, but the crew won't listen because they think they're just stupid prisoners, basically. More to-ing and fro-ing, and then the Doctor kind of convinces them, or convinces one of the crew members, that he's making sense. And in the end, none of the main characters actually kind of die. It's more like some of the lesser minions, if you like, they kind of get killed off. But yeah, it's and then they kind of live happily ever after the Doctor's kind of brainwash this guy a little bit at the end. So that's the kind of the basics of the story. And yeah, I really liked it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't one of those stories where I tuned out and zoned out while I was watching it because it didn't grab my attention enough, which happened very, very rarely, I must say, with anything to do with Doctor Who. But I was kind of hooked by this. I did want to see what was going on. It does lead quite nicely, and it's one of those cool stories as well. I like these Doctor Who serials that are 4 to 6 episodes long. I think that's a good time to kind of get into it. It's just under an hour. They're like 25 minutes each, these 4 episodes, and so it's basically an hour. It's pretty good, and I really like Tom Baker in this. There are a few scenes where he's got that classic crazy bulbous eyes look going on in a few scenes, and he's placid and he's funny, and all the things that make Tom Baker perfect for this role he brings out in this story. And Sarah Jane, Liz Sladen, she's pretty cool. She's not at her best in this, I don't think. She doesn't really do a great deal. She just kind of follows the Doctor everywhere and tells him what's going on, really. It's like his own personal commentator. So she doesn't really do a great deal, but she's still quite cool in this. But the not problem that I've got, but the thing that I didn't really take away as that good from this episode was the monster in this. I found it to be very lackluster in its execution. And basically all it is just a monster, an almost invisible monster derived from antimatter that just can drain lives of people, and it doesn't really do much. It doesn't really make that much of an appearance too much. It doesn't really go. We don't really find out exactly what the monster's origins are. We don't exactly know what it's about. I'm assuming that it's the motives for him, for this monster killing people, is that it's just not too fond of alien beings being on the planet in the first place, and is certainly not okay with anyone taking samples containing antimatter off the planet. So it's very simplistic in its execution, and you can't really fault the effects. I mean, it was obviously at the time back in 1975 when you were watching it fresh, it was probably, oh wow, that looks very cool. They've kind of got this overlay thing going on with they've kind of drained out all the colour and oversaturated the red, so it looks like it's this red kind of thing waddling around. It's very slow and it doesn't really do much. And that was my only issue, I guess, with the story, was that there wasn't much going on in terms of we didn't really know what was going on with the monster. It was just kind of there, as part of the planet, I guess. But one thing that I did like about this episode, and one thing that's always struck me as really, really well written episodes, is when you have a lot of internal friction within the cast. And I've spoken about this episode before on the podcast, and that is the David Tennant episode Midnight, where essentially all it is, it's just a bunch of people trapped on a ship, and the entire episode pretty much is just the internal friction and play between the characters. And there's kind of an element, and I'm pretty sure that, Russell T Davies or Stephen Moffat have pulled inspiration from episodes like this, where it's not so much the monster that's the main threat sometimes. It's really about human nature and power struggles and trust and that sort of thing. And so there is a cool little heated conversation between some of the crew in Planet of Evil.
We hadn't been wasting our time down there.
They caused it all.
How could they have caused this? We were with them. Attention. All crewmen report to assembly point immediately. Red alert. Red alert.
Countermanded. Only I can give a red alert.
It's too late for any more mistakes, Salamar. I'm taking command.
You'll regret this.
You'll regret this. It's very much it's very kind of typical British for the time, where you've got people raising their voices and screaming in each other's face, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see that kind of internal friction and the power struggles. And for me, that makes a really good Doctor Who episode. So I'm glad that because sometimes you see it's like the Doctor and his companion are investigating something, then this big kind of corporation or something turns up, and it's got that very plasticky, trying to think of words to describe this now. It's got that very cold, non-organic feel to it. It's like the corporation or this company or the military, whatever. In some episodes are just there for the sake of it, really. And you don't really find out, what's going on. Whereas episodes like this, there's actually a lot of emotion running through the episode. A lot of, because at the end of the day, these crew members are being killed slowly, and there's the captain of the ship who, he really, really doesn't want to trust the Doctor. As far as he sees it, the Doctor is the bad guy. He's the prisoner. His companion is the bad guy or the bad girl. So, they're there to cause trouble, not to be trusted. He's very much following protocol and that sort of thing. Whereas his kind of second in command, I guess, is very, he doesn't see things in black and white. It's not just the Doctor's bad or good. He sees in shades of grey, and he understands a bit more what's going on and begins to trust the Doctor. And he can see through what's going on. And like I said, I really like how things like that are written into these episodes. Production-wise, it's pretty good. It's got the classic, stuff that we all love about this era of Doctor Who. So it's got very, very flimsy sets. There's a scene where you see the side of the ship and the kind of steps, if you like, or the walkway gets lowered down. But the way that it's lowered down is like there's like a fisheye hook in the ceiling with some string around it, and you can tell that it's being lowered down, manually by people. And when the crewmen start to walk down the walkway, because the string is in a triangle, they can't really walk through it that well. And then there are things like inside the ship, there's like a mezzanine section where the captain sits up there, and that's a bit shaky at times. And there's also a strange couple of scenes where when they're outside on the planet, which is all like this kind of surreal, very sci-fi looking forest, and it's all very pink and red and purple and stuff. There's this, I think it lasts for about 5 minutes, where it looks like the stock, the TV stock camera footage is really downgraded or that particular scene has been lost, so they've had to insert like a real rough cut in the episode. All it is, it's just where the Doctor and Sarah Jane are running through the woods basically and hiding from this monster. And just that particular section, which I think it lasts for about 5 minutes, I think it's in the first or the second episode, it's incredibly grainy, and the colour correction is not right and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it doesn't really detract too much, but you can, it really is a very big difference between, what you saw before, and then you move on to this kind of weird looking, very grainy, unfinished, uncorrected bit of footage. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. Like I said, the monster creature effects were okay-ish for the time. It's pretty good. It worked far better than the Loch Ness Monster in Terror of the Zygons anyway, which is the Doctor Who story that I watched a few days ago, which I absolutely love, by the way. Really, really cool. But the monster effect of the Loch Ness was, so it wasn't as bad as that, but then again, it wasn't anything great that we've seen before. But then again, this is classic Who from the Tom Baker years and before, and, even after that, even stuff in the Sylvester McCoy stuff is very, very questionable in terms of quality, which we can understand because of budgets and all that kind of stuff. But so that is Planet of Evil. So really liked it. Thought it was quite cool. I really liked Tom Baker in this one. Very cool. Liz Sladen, she was good. Not her best few episodes, not her best story, but still very good nonetheless. Supporting cast were really good, especially Frederick Jaeger and Ewan Solon. Really, really good. Overall, I would give Planet of Evil a 7. I think that's a fair score. 7 out of 10. So that is a wrap on episode 10. Thank you very much for sticking with me. It's been really cool giving you guys some news roundups, talking around the 10th anniversary next year, potentially, and anything that could come of that, and this episode's retrospective of Planet of Evil. As always, you can find me on all the social networks, mainly Twitter and Facebook. Jump over to Twitter and follow at Big Blue Box PCast. And you can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Big Blue Box Podcast. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes. Just jump into the podcast section and do a search for Big Blue Box Podcast. And if you guys could give me a rating and review, that would be really, really great and really helps me out as well. And as usual, you can find these podcasts and all the other previous ones and other bits and pieces over at the website www.bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. I will see you guys next time for episode 11, but until then, allons-y!